All right, so you wanted to know all about the latest treatments for ADHD, major depressive disorder, and generalized anxiety disorder, right? Well, we've got you covered. We dove deep into the newest research, the latest medical guidelines, even some fresh FDA announcements just for you.
Yeah, even in just the last 5 years, it's amazing how much has changed in this field.
It really is mind-blowing. And speaking of minds, um, let's start with ADHD. When we think about treating ADHD, medication often takes center stage.
Yeah, for a lot of people, stimulants like methylphenidate, Ritalin, Concerta, and amphetamine salts, Adderall, they can be really effective. I mean, they're considered the go-to for a reason.
Yeah, they work by boosting dopamine and norepinephrine in the brain, which I know are really important for attention and focus. But I have to admit, the thought of those medications can be a little bit intimidating.
I get it. They are powerful medications. But a crucial thing to remember is that while they are Schedule II drugs, the risk of addiction is actually very low when they're used for treatment exactly as a doctor prescribes.
Okay, that does make me feel better. But what about those who can't tolerate stimulants or maybe have concerns about them? Are there other paths we can explore?
Absolutely. That's where the non-stimulant medications come in. They work a little differently than stimulants, but for some people, they can be just as effective.
So it's like having different tools in the toolbox for managing ADHD?
Precisely.
Can you tell me more about those non-stimulant options?
Yeah, so there's atomoxetine, which focuses on norepinephrine, and then there's guanfacine and clonidine. These two target the same brain chemical, but they do it in slightly different ways, so one might be a better fit for you than the other. For example, guanfacine and clonidine can be helpful in the evenings because they have calming effects.
So it's all about finding the right tool for the job, tailored to your individual needs.
Exactly. It's not one size fits all. And speaking of finding the right fit, I know some people worry about the safety of ADHD medications, but the FDA takes this very seriously. They have a system called MedWatch, which keeps track of any adverse effects. They're constantly working to prevent overprescription. And they also require clear medication guides that outline all the potential risks and benefits.
That makes sense. It sounds like the key is having open communication with your doctor, being honest about your concerns, and working together to find a treatment plan that feels safe and effective.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about teamwork and finding that sweet spot where you're getting relief from symptoms without unnecessary risks.
Now, we've talked a lot about medication, but I know there are other ways to approach ADHD treatment, especially for children. What's the latest on non-pharmaceutical options?
Oh, well, behavioral therapy is incredibly important, especially for younger kids. Think of it as providing a strong foundation. There are parent training programs that can help you learn how to support your child, classroom strategies that teachers can use to create a structured environment, and positive reinforcement techniques that can really make a difference.
It sounds like a multi-pronged approach where everyone involved is working together to support the child.
Exactly. And it's interesting. For kids under 6, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the AAP, they recommend trying behavioral therapy first before even considering medication.
Wow, I didn't realize that. So behavioral therapy is really considered the first line of defense for young children with ADHD.
It is. And then for older kids, a combination of medication and behavioral therapy is often the most effective. It's about hitting the problem from multiple angles.
It sounds like teamwork is key. Are there any other non-pharmaceutical approaches that are showing promise?
There are some really interesting things on the horizon. Cognitive training, which helps strengthen specific brain skills, and neurofeedback, which teaches you to regulate your brain waves, are both being explored as additional tools, though they're still being studied. And for adults, psychotherapy and coaching can be really helpful.
It seems like there's this growing recognition that treating ADHD isn't just about managing symptoms, it's about equipping people with the skills they need to thrive.
Absolutely, and major organizations like the NIMH, the AAP, and the APA are all emphasizing this individualized, multifaceted approach to ADHD. It's about finding the unique combination of treatments that helps someone reach their full potential.
So if someone is listening to this and thinking, wow, that sounds like me, where do they even start?
Well, the first step is always to talk to a healthcare provider. They can assess your specific needs and help you explore the different treatment options. It's about finding that personalized path that works best for you.
I love that. Now, I do want to talk about some of the exciting new developments in ADHD treatment, especially those that have emerged in the last 5 years. Things are moving so quickly in this field.
Oh, absolutely. The FDA just approved the first ever video game as a treatment for ADHD.
Wait, a video game, really?
I know, right? It's called EndeavorRx, and it's designed to target attention function in children. It's a pretty big deal because it offers a non-medication option that kids might actually enjoy.
That's so cool. It makes you wonder what other creative solutions are out there just waiting to be discovered.
There's also a brand new medication called viloxazine, or Qelbree, which is the first new non-stimulant medication for ADHD in decades.
Wow, that's huge.
It is, and it doesn't stop there. Researchers are exploring integrative approaches like exercise, which can be incredibly beneficial for attention and mood, and mindfulness meditation, which can help with focus and self-regulation.
It sounds like we're moving towards a more holistic understanding of ADHD, recognizing that there are so many different ways to support people.
Exactly. And even more cutting-edge treatments are on the horizon. We're thinking about things like neuromodulation, which involves using technology to directly stimulate the brain. Techniques like RTMS and trigeminal nerve stimulation are being explored as potential treatments for ADHD.
It's like something out of a science fiction movie. Who knows what the future holds?
Right. It's an incredibly exciting time to be in this field. There's so much potential for improving the lives of people with ADHD.
Well, speaking of exciting developments, I think it's time to shift gears and talk about major depressive disorder. This is another area where treatment options are constantly evolving, and there's so much new research emerging all the time.
Yeah. For a lot of people, it can be really hard, and they're searching for relief, so let's dive in.
Let's do it. I know antidepressant medications are often the first line of treatment for MDD. Can you walk us through some of the most commonly prescribed types?
Yeah, when you think about initial treatments, you often hear about SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They're popular because they're generally effective and have a good safety profile. Think of SSRIs like a volume knob for serotonin in your brain. They help turn up the levels of this mood-boosting chemical. Some well-known examples include sertraline, fluoxetine, citalopram, citalopram, and paroxetine.
Okay, that analogy makes sense. So if someone is struggling with depression and their serotonin levels are low, SSRIs can help bring them back up to a healthy range.
Exactly. But one thing to keep in mind is that SSRIs, and most antidepressants in general, take time to work. We're talking 4 to 8 weeks to really feel the full effects.
So it's not an instant fix.
Right.
But for many, it can be a game changer.
Right. And it's important to be aware that SSRIs can come with side effects, too. Some of the most common ones are gastrointestinal issues, headaches, and changes in sexual function. It's something to discuss openly with your doctor so you can weigh the potential benefits against the risks.
I'm hearing a lot about safety concerns with antidepressants. What are the biggest things people should be aware of?
One important thing to know is that all antidepressants carry a black box, warning about a potential increased risk of suicidal thoughts, especially in young adults. It's not that these medications cause suicidal thoughts, but they might temporarily increase the risk for some individuals, especially during the initial stages of treatment. So close monitoring by a doctor is absolutely crucial, especially in those early weeks.
That's really important information for people to have. So it's not about being afraid of antidepressants, but about being informed, proactive, and having a strong support system in place.
Exactly. It's all about being a partner in your healthcare and making sure you have all the information you need to make the best decisions for yourself.
Now, besides SSRIs, are there other types of antidepressants that are commonly prescribed?
Another common type is SNRIs, serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. These work on both serotonin and norepinephrine, which is another chemical messenger in the brain that plays a role in mood and energy levels. They have a similar side effect profile to SSRIs, but one thing to watch out for is SNRIs can sometimes raise blood pressure, so that needs to be monitored.
So if someone's dealing with both depression and low energy, SNRIs might be a good option to explore.
They could be, yeah. And then there's another interesting category called atypical antidepressants. These have unique ways of working in the brain, and they often come with a different set of side effects.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these atypical antidepressants.
Well, there's bupropion. This one is known for not causing sexual side effects, which could be a big concern for some people. It also tends to be more energizing, so might be a good option if someone is struggling with fatigue alongside their depression.
So if you're worried about sexual side effects from antidepressants, the propion might be a game changer for you.
Exactly. Then there's mirtazapine. This one is actually quite sedating, so it's often prescribed for people who have trouble sleeping. It can also increase appetite, which might be helpful for someone who's lost their appetite due to depression.
It's like matching the medication to the person's specific symptoms and needs.
That's the goal, yeah. We also have older types of antidepressants like TCAs, tricyclic antidepressants, and MAOIs, monoamine oxidase inhibitors. They can be effective, but they do come with a higher risk of side effects and potential interactions, so they're not usually the first choice.
It sounds like finding the right antidepressant can be a journey, and it's all about working closely with your doctor to figure out what works best for you.
You got it. It might take some trial and error, and patience is key, but remember, it's about finding the treatment that gives you the best chance of feeling like yourself again.
And sometimes, even with medication, it can be helpful to have additional support. I've heard about these augmentation strategies. What exactly are those?
Well, sometimes if someone isn't getting full relief from a single antidepressant, their doctor might suggest adding another medication to the mix. This could be another type of antidepressant, or it could be something from a different class of medications, like an atypical antipsychotic or lithium, which is a mood stabilizer.
So it's like combining forces to create a more powerful effect.
Yeah, exactly. It's about finding the right combination that helps someone achieve remission from their depression.
And of course, just like with ADHD, we can't forget about psychotherapy as a crucial part of depression treatment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, for some people, especially those with mild to moderate depression, psychotherapy might be all they need. And for others, combining therapy with medication can be the most effective strategy.
It's about tackling the problem from multiple angles. So, what are some of the most effective therapies for depression?
Two of the gold standards for treating depression are cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and interpersonal therapy, or IPT.
I've heard a lot about CBT. How does that work?
Well, CBT helps people identify and challenge those negative thought patterns that can contribute to depression. It's like retraining your brain to think and react differently to situations. It also helps people develop healthier coping mechanisms and behaviors.
So, it's not just about feeling better, it's about learning new skills that can prevent those negative thought patterns from taking over in the future.
Exactly. It's about building resilience and empowering people to manage their depression in the long term. And then we have IPT, which focuses on relationships.
Now, that's interesting. How does that work?
Well, IPT helps people understand how their relationships and social interactions might be affecting their mood. It's particularly helpful for those whose depression is linked to life events, like a relationship breakdown or a job loss.
So, it's about recognizing that our relationships can have a profound impact on our mental health and learning how to build healthy and supportive connections.
Exactly. And sometimes when traditional treatments like medication and psychotherapy haven't been effective, or when someone needs very rapid relief from severe symptoms, brain stimulation therapies might be considered.
Brain stimulation therapies, those sound pretty intense.
They can be, yeah. These are usually reserved for severe cases of depression that haven't responded to other treatments, or when someone is experiencing suicidal thoughts or psychosis, which is a break from reality.
So, they're more like a last resort when other options haven't worked.
Yeah. One of the most well-established brain stimulation therapies is electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT. It involves passing a brief electrical current through the brain while the patient is under anesthesia. It's highly effective, but it does have potential side effects like temporary memory loss.
I see. But for someone who's in a really dark place and hasn't found relief from other treatments, ECT could be a lifeline.
It really can be. And there are other brain stimulation therapies that are less invasive, like RTMS, repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation. This one uses magnetic pulses to stimulate specific areas of the brain involved in mood regulation. It's FDA approved and generally well tolerated.
That's good to know. Are there any other brain stimulation therapies being explored for depression?
Yeah, there's a lot of research going on in this area. Some other therapies being studied include VNS, vagus nerve stimulation DBS, deep brain stimulation, and TDCS, transcranial direct current stimulation. They all involve stimulating different parts of the brain using different methods.
It's incredible to think about how technology is being used to treat mental health conditions. It's like we're on the verge of a whole new era of treatment possibilities.
It really is. And alongside these technological advances, we're also seeing a growing interest in more holistic and integrative approaches to depression treatment.
Like what kinds of things?
Well, there's light therapy, which can be helpful for seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, a type of depression that's linked to changes in daylight hours. And then there's exercise, which has been shown to have modest antidepressant effects.
So getting those endorphins pumping can actually help lift your mood. I love that.
Yeah. It's a great example of how lifestyle changes can play a role in managing depression. And then there are dietary supplements like St. John's wort, samer, omega-3 fatty acids, and vitamin D.
Are those as effective as medication?
Well, the evidence for those is a bit more mixed. It's important to talk to your doctor before taking any supplements, especially if you're already on medication, as there could be interactions. And it's crucial to remember that none of these supplements are FDA approved to treat depression. They're more like complementary approaches that might be helpful in conjunction with other treatments.
It sounds like the key is to have a balanced approach and to work closely with a healthcare provider to create a treatment plan that addresses your individual needs.
Exactly. And the good news is that there are so many different avenues to explore.
So even if one treatment hasn't worked, there's always hope that another one might.
Absolutely. There's no need to give up. Keep searching, keep trying, and keep advocating for yourself.
And one thing that really stood out to me is that we're starting to move beyond this idea of a one-size-fits-all approach to depression treatment. It's becoming more and more personalized.
You're absolutely right. That's a really positive development.
But there's so much to unpack with these individual approaches, so we'll need to save that conversation for part 2.
Oh, good.
Until then, keep those brains buzzing. So we've explored a ton of different treatments for both ADHD and major depressive disorder, but there's a lot more to discover. I'm curious, when it comes to MDD, what does the research actually tell us about how well these different treatments work, especially when we compare therapy and medication?
That's a great question, and it's something that's been debated a lot. But here's the thing. For mild to moderate depression, studies have consistently shown that psychotherapy, especially structured approaches like CBT or IPT, can be just as effective as medication.
So for someone who's feeling down but not completely debilitated by their depression, therapy could be a really good starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. And for some people, it might be all they need to get back on track. But, it is important to remember that for those with more severe depression, particularly if they're experiencing things like suicidal thoughts or psychosis, which is a break from reality, medication is often considered essential.
So it's not about saying one approach is better than the other. It's about recognizing that different people will benefit from different treatments depending on their individual needs.
Exactly. And for many people, combining medication and therapy can be the most powerful approach. Medication can help alleviate those intense symptoms enough for someone to fully engage in therapy, while therapy can equip them with those long-term coping skills to prevent relapse.
So they work together synergistically,
Yeah.
each one supporting the other. I love that. You also mentioned earlier a study that looked at how the effectiveness of antidepressants relates to the severity of depression. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, the Fournier meta-analysis, it was a landmark study, and it really shifted the way we think about antidepressant treatment. What they found was that for people with very mild depression, antidepressants didn't show much of a difference compared to a placebo.
So for those folks, the benefits of the medication might not outweigh the potential risks or side effects.
Exactly. But as the severity of depression increased, so did the effectiveness of the medication. For those with moderate to severe depression, antidepressants made a significant difference in their recovery.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not about saying antidepressants don't work. It's about understanding that their effectiveness can vary depending on the individual and the intensity of their symptoms.
Right. And this is why it's so crucial to have that open and honest conversation with your doctor. They can help you assess your symptoms, consider your individual preferences, and guide you toward the treatment path that's most likely to be effective for you.
So let's say someone is struggling with depression and they've decided to talk to their doctor. How do doctors actually go about deciding which treatment to recommend? I mean, it seems like there are so many options to choose from.
I know it can feel overwhelming, but there are actually guidelines to help navigate these decisions. Organizations like the American Psychiatric Association, or APA, have developed treatment algorithms based on years of research and clinical experience. These algorithms consider things like the severity of symptoms, patient preferences, potential side effects, and safety concerns.
So it's not just a random guess. There's a thought process and a system in place to guide those decisions.
Exactly. It's about making informed choices based on the best available evidence. And for those who don't find relief with the first treatment they try, there are always other options to explore. It might involve switching medications, adjusting dosages, adding therapy, or even considering those brain stimulation therapies we talked about earlier. The key is to keep trying and to work closely with your healthcare provider to find what works best for you.
Persistence and collaboration are key. Now, before we move on from depression, I wanted to circle back to those exciting developments you mentioned earlier. What are some of the most promising breakthroughs that have emerged in the last 5 years?
Well, the approval of esketamine for treatment-resistant depression has been a real game changer. We're talking about rapid relief for those who had previously struggled to find any effective treatments. It's really revolutionized the way we think about severe depression.
And I remember you mentioning a medication specifically for postpartum depression. That must be such a relief for new moms who are struggling.
Absolutely. Brexanolone, which is an intravenous infusion of a neurosteroid, was approved in 2019. This was a landmark development because it was the first medication specifically designed to target postpartum depression. It offers a new level of hope for women who are going through this challenging time. And then just this year, zuranolone, an oral version of a similar medication, was also approved for postpartum depression and is being studied for other forms of depression too.
Wow. It's amazing to see treatments being developed to address those specific needs. Are there any other groundbreaking developments in the works?
Oh, absolutely. Personalized medicine is a really hot area of research right now. Imagine being able to predict which treatment will work best for an individual based on their genes or biomarkers. We're not quite there yet, but it's definitely on the horizon.
That would be incredible. No more trial and error, just targeted treatments based on your unique biology. It's like science fiction becoming reality.
I know, right? And we can't forget about the rise of telehealth and digital interventions, therapy apps, telepsychiatry, mood monitoring tools. These are all transforming the way we access mental health care. They're making it more convenient, accessible, and personalized than ever before.
It's like having a therapist in your pocket. But speaking of transformative treatments, you mentioned earlier the potential of psychedelic-assisted therapy for depression. Can you tell me more about that? I have to admit, I'm super curious.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area of research, and it's generating a lot of excitement. Early studies using psilocybin, the psychoactive compound found in magic mushrooms, have shown some really promising results for treating depression, especially those cases that haven't responded to traditional treatments.
So it's not just about having a psychedelic experience, there's a therapeutic component to it.
Exactly. It's not about recreational use.
Mm-hmm.
It's about using psilocybin in a controlled therapeutic setting with trained facilitators to help people process trauma, gain new insights into their thought patterns, and essentially kind of reset their brains.
Wow, that is a completely different way of thinking about depression treatment. It sounds like it has the potential to be truly groundbreaking.
It does. It's still early days, but the results so far are very encouraging. And it's not just psilocybin that's being explored. Other psychedelics, like MDMA and LSD, are also being studied for their potential therapeutic benefits.
This is definitely something I'm going to be following closely. It feels like we're on the cusp of a major shift in how we understand and treat mental health conditions.
I agree. It's a really exciting time to be in this field. I know we've covered a lot of ground with depression, but I do want to make sure we dedicate some time to generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD. We talked earlier about how medication and therapy are the mainstays of treatment, but are there any recent trends or developments that are shaking things up in the world of GAD treatment?
I'm glad you brought that up. I know GAD can be a really debilitating condition, and I'm always eager to learn about new approaches that might offer relief. What's got you excited in the world of GAD treatment?
Well, one of the most notable trends is the move away from benzodiazepines. These are medications like Xanax and Klonopin that are often prescribed for anxiety, but they come with a high risk of dependence and withdrawal. So there's a real push towards safer, non-addictive options.
So it's about prioritizing long-term well-being over that quick fix. I like that. What are some of these safer alternatives that people are turning to?
Well, SSRIs and SNRIs, which we discussed for depression, are also commonly used to treat GAD. They can be very effective for managing anxiety symptoms, and they have a lower risk of dependence compared to benzodiazepines.
So they're like multi-purpose tools that can address both mood and anxiety issues. That's pretty cool.
It is. And then there's another medication called buspirone that's specifically approved for GA. It's non-sedating and non-addictive, which is a big plus for many people. It takes a few weeks to reach full effectiveness, but it can be a really valuable option for long-term anxiety management.
That's good to know. So there are medications out there that can help people manage their anxiety without worrying about becoming dependent on them.
Exactly. And alongside medication, psychotherapy, particularly CBT, is considered a cornerstone of GAD treatment.
So those skills we talked about earlier, like challenging negative thoughts and developing coping mechanisms, are just as relevant for anxiety as they are for depression.
Absolutely. In fact, CBT for GD often includes specific techniques like exposure to worry, where patients gradually confront their fears in a controlled setting. It can be a bit challenging at first, but it can be incredibly effective in helping people break free from those patterns of worry and fear.
So it's about facing your fears head on, but doing it in a safe and supportive environment. I can see how that could be empowering. Are there any other types of therapy that are commonly used for GD?
Yeah. There are other effective approaches like applied relaxation, which teaches people how to relax their muscles and reduce physical tension, mindfulness-based stress reduction, which helps people develop a greater awareness of their thoughts and feelings without judgment, and psychodynamic therapy, which explores how unconscious conflicts and past experiences might be contributing to anxiety.
It's amazing how many different approaches there are to managing anxiety. It really speaks to the complexity of the human experience and the need for personalized treatment plans.
I couldn't agree more. And it's not just about medication and therapy. Lifestyle changes can play a huge role in managing anxiety as well. Things like exercise, mindfulness meditation, and good sleep hygiene can have a profound impact on how we feel.
So it's about taking care of yourself holistically, mind, body, and spirit.
Precisely. Even simple things like cutting back on caffeine, sugar, and alcohol can make a difference. And creating a supportive and calming environment at home and work can go a long way in reducing stress and anxiety.
It sounds like it's all about creating those healthy habits that nourish your mind and body.
You got it. It's about finding those little things you can do each day to take care of yourself and build resilience.
Now, when it comes to deciding between therapy and medication for GAD, what does the research say? Is one generally more effective than the other?
That's a great question, and it's not always a straightforward answer. Some studies have suggested that therapy, specifically CBT, might have a slight edge over medication in terms of long-term effectiveness for GD. And again, it really depends on the individual, the severity of their anxiety, their personal preferences, and their access to care.
So it's not a case of one size fits all. It's about finding the best fit for each person's unique needs and circumstances.
Exactly. And for many people, combining medication and therapy can be the most effective strategy. Medication can help alleviate those intense symptoms and make it easier to engage in therapy, while therapy can provide those long-term tools and coping skills to manage anxiety in the long run.
It's about creating a synergistic approach that maximizes the benefits of both treatments.
You got it. And one thing I find really interesting is that we're seeing a growing focus on integrated treatment for comorbid anxiety and depression. These conditions often go hand in hand.
So instead of treating them as separate problems, we're starting to recognize that they might be interconnected and need to be addressed holistically.
Exactly. It's about treating the whole person, not just the individual symptoms.
That makes so much sense. And I know you mentioned earlier some exciting developments in GAD treatment. Are there any other breakthroughs on the horizon that you're particularly excited about?
Oh, I'm really excited about the growing emphasis on non-addictive treatments for anxiety. There's been a significant shift away from benzodiazepines, which is a positive step towards promoting long-term well-being. And we're seeing a real surge in interest in mindfulness and acceptance strategies, which could be incredibly empowering for people with anxiety.
So it's not just about trying to eliminate anxiety altogether. It's about learning to live with it in a way that doesn't control your life.
Exactly. It's about developing a different relationship with anxiety, one that's based on acceptance, self-compassion, and a deep understanding of how your mind works.
I love that. It's about finding that inner peace even amidst the chaos of life. Now, I know we've talked a lot about the therapeutic side of things, but are there any new medications being explored for GA? Anything groundbreaking on the horizon?
Yeah, there's some interesting developments in the pharmaceutical world as well. Researchers are exploring new applications for existing medications like ketamine for treating refractory anxiety.
Wait, ketamine, that's the same medication that's being used for depression, right?
It is. It's showing up in a lot of different areas of mental health research these days. And for anxiety, the idea is that ketamine's unique effects on the brain might help to interrupt those deeply ingrained patterns of fear and worry that can be so hard to break.
So it's like hitting the reset button on those anxious thought patterns. I'm definitely seeing a theme here.
Right. It is a fascinating area of research. And another important development is the growing recognition of the role of the gut microbiome in mental health.
The gut microbiome, what does that have to do with anxiety?
Well, there's a growing body of evidence suggesting that the bacteria that live in our gut can actually influence our mood and behavior. And imbalances in the gut microbiome have been linked to a number of mental health conditions, including anxiety.
Wow, that's incredible. So taking care of our gut health could actually be a key part of managing our anxiety.
It could be, yeah. It's still early days. But this research has huge potential for developing new and innovative treatments for anxiety.
It's amazing to think about how interconnected our bodies are and how something like gut health could play a role in our mental well-being. It really highlights the importance of a holistic approach to health and wellness.
I completely agree. Another exciting development is the increasing focus on personalized medicine for anxiety. Researchers are working on identifying biomarkers and genetic factors that might help predict which treatments are most likely to be effective for individuals.
So we're moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach and towards a more targeted, personalized approach to anxiety treatment.
Exactly. It's about finding the right treatment for the right person at the right time. And with all these new developments, I'm incredibly optimistic about the future of GAD treatment. We're getting a deeper understanding of how anxiety works in the brain, and we're developing more effective and personalized treatment options all the time.
It's an exciting time to be in this field, but we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Are there any key takeaways you want to leave our listeners with as we wrap up this part of the conversation?
Well, I think the most important message is that if you're struggling with anxiety, you're not alone. There are effective treatments available, and there's no shame in seeking help.
I couldn't agree more. Reaching out for support is a sign of strength, not weakness.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that recovery is a journey, not a destination. It might take some time to find the right treatment plan, and there might be setbacks along the way. But with patience, persistence, and the right support, it is possible to manage your anxiety and live a full and meaningful life.
Those are powerful words of encouragement. And speaking of powerful words, I think it's time for us to take a little break and gather our thoughts before we dive into the final part of this deep dive.
Sounds good. We'll be back soon with more insights and practical tips.
Welcome back to the show. So we've covered so much, exploring all the latest in ADHD, MDD, and GAD treatments. But before we wrap things up, I think it's important to zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger picture.
I agree. It's easy to get lost in the details, but it is really crucial to understand the guiding principles behind all these treatments.
Exactly. And that's where those treatment guidelines we keep mentioning come in. They're like roadmaps, helping healthcare professionals make informed decisions about treatment.
Yeah, think of them as a trusted guide based on, years of research and clinical experience. They do provide evidence-based recommendations, but they also acknowledge that every person is different. What works for one person might not work for another.
So they're not a one-size-fits-all approach. They're more like a starting point for a conversation between the patient and their doctor.
Precisely. They help to ensure that treatment decisions are personalized, evidence-based, and tailored to the individual's unique needs and preferences.
Now, I know the American Psychiatric Association, the APA, has a guideline for treating major depressive disorder. What are some of the key takeaways from that guideline?
Well, one of the most important messages is that there's no one right way to treat depression. The guideline emphasizes a personalized approach, taking into account things like symptom severity, patient preferences, and potential side effects. For mild to moderate depression, they recommend either therapy or medication as a first step, acknowledging that both can be effective.
So it's about giving people options and letting them choose what feels right for them.
Absolutely. And for more severe cases, the guideline typically recommends a combination of medication and therapy, recognizing that tackling depression from multiple angles is often the most effective strategy.
It's like building a support system for your mental health, using both medication and therapy to create a strong foundation for recovery.
Exactly. It's about providing comprehensive care that addresses the biological, psychological, and social aspects of depression.
Now, what about GAD? Are there specific guidelines for treating generalized anxiety disorder?
Well, the APA doesn't have a standalone guideline specifically for JDE yet. But other organizations, like the VAOD, have developed comprehensive recommendations for treating anxiety disorders.
And what do those guidelines suggest?
They strongly recommend either medication or therapy as a first-line treatment or a combination of the two. Just like with depression, it's about recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all solution and that treatment needs to be personalized.
It's about finding the right balance of support, whether that's through medication, therapy, or a combination of both.
Exactly. And these guidelines also emphasize the importance of shared decision-making. They encourage healthcare providers to involve patients in every step of the treatment process, discussing the risks and benefits of different options and making decisions together.
So it's not about the doctor dictating treatment.
Right.
It's about creating a collaborative partnership where the patient feels empowered and heard.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
It's about respecting the individual's autonomy and recognizing that they are the ultimate expert on their own experience.
Now, besides the APA and the VDO, are there any other organizations playing a role in shaping treatment recommendations and promoting best practices?
Well, the National Institute of Mental Health, or NIMH, plays a crucial role in advancing mental health research and disseminating evidence-based information to the public. They're like the mythbusters of mental health, separating fact from fiction and making sure people have access to accurate and reliable information.
So they're like the trusted source for all things mental health.
Exactly.
Right.
And they also fund a lot of important research, which helps to drive innovation and improve treatment options for people with mental health conditions.
What about the FDA? I know they're involved in approving medications. Do they play a role in treatment guidelines as well?
Well, their role is more focused on regulating medication safety and ensuring that drugs are appropriately labeled and monitored. They're the guardians of medication safety, making sure that medications are effective and that the risks are clearly communicated to patients and healthcare providers.
So they're like the watchdogs of the pharmaceutical industry, making sure that medications are held to the highest standards of safety and efficacy.
Exactly. And they also play a role in encouraging the development of new and innovative treatments for mental health conditions.
That's good to know. So we have all these different organizations working together to ensure that people have access to safe, effective, and evidence-based treatments.
Yeah, it's a collaborative effort with everyone playing their part
Yeah.
to advance the field of mental health care.
Now, if all these guidelines and recommendations swirling around, what does this all mean for the average person who's struggling with ADHD, MDD, or GAD? What's the key takeaway message here?
You know, I think the most important message is that there's hope and effective treatment is possible. Whether it's medication, therapy, lifestyle changes, or a combination of approaches, the first step is talking to a healthcare professional. They can help you navigate all these options, understand the latest research, and find the path forward that feels right for you.
It's about finding that personalized roadmap to well-being, working with a trusted guide who can help you navigate the terrain.
Exactly. And remember, it's okay to ask questions, advocate for your needs, and keep trying until you find what works. Recovery is a journey, not a destination.
It's about being an active participant in your own healing process.
Absolutely. And it's about recognizing that you are not alone. Millions of people are struggling with these conditions, and there are resources available to support you.
There's a whole community of people out there who understand what you're going through.
And remember, there's no shame in seeking help. It's a sign of strength and self-awareness.
I couldn't agree more. Now, before we sign off, I can't resist indulging in a little bit of future gazing. What do you think the future holds for treating these conditions? Any predictions?
Well, I think we're on the verge of some incredible breakthroughs. Personalized medicine, using biomarkers and genetics to tailor treatments, is going to revolutionize the way we approach mental health care. Imagine a world where we can predict which treatment will work best for an individual based on their unique biological makeup.
So no more trial and error with medications, just targeted treatments that are designed to address the specific underlying causes of your condition.
That's the goal. And digital interventions are going to become even more sophisticated and integrated into our lives. We might see wearable devices that can detect changes in our mood or behavior and alert us to potential problems, or virtual reality therapies that can help us confront our fears in a safe and controlled environment.
It's like mental health care is entering a whole new dimension, blending technology and human connection in ways we never thought possible.
Exactly. And those psychedelic-assisted therapies we talked about, they have the potential to really revolutionize the way we treat trauma, depression, and anxiety, offering new avenues for healing and growth.
Wow, it's like we're expanding the boundaries of what's possible in mental health care.
And with ongoing research and innovation, I'm incredibly optimistic that we'll continue to develop even more effective, personalized, and compassionate treatments for these conditions. The future of mental health care is bright, and I'm really excited to see what unfolds in the years to come.
Well, it's an exciting time to be a brain enthusiast. We've reached the end of our deep dive into ADHD, MDD, and GAD treatments. We've explored the science, the strategies, and even peeked into the future. But remember, this is just the beginning of your exploration.
Yeah, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep those neurons firing. There's always more to discover.
And if you're struggling, reach out for help. There are resources available, and you don't have to go through this alone. Remember, you are not alone, and there is hope for a brighter tomorrow.
Until next time. Stay curious, stay informed, and keep diving deep.
And keep taking care of those amazing brains of yours.